Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my official college football Week 5 survival guide, where I highlight some of the most important things to note of Week 5 for college football. What do you need to know? What's happening this weekend? We've got the game of the week. It's NC State at Clemson. Let's not overthink this. This is a top 10 matchup. I do expect Clemson to win. But guys, we've got a major story with the massive hurricane, and I'm going to be discussing how that will affect this game. But certainly, a 10v5 matchup. Clemson 7-point favorites. They are at home. NC State maybe not looking amazing this year, but this is a huge matchup. So that is the game of the week. It is the 7:30 ABC game. I would imagine with Herb Street and Fowler and everyone there on campus there in Clemson. The worst game, so we've got Florida International traveling to New Mexico State. New Mexico State is actually 15-point favorites, and guys, when it comes to the race for the worst team in FBS, I know we're all watching that. A lot of us want to see who is going to be the worst team. It looks like Florida International, after their 76-0 loss to Western Kentucky last week, they look like the worst team in FBS. New Mexico State is really bad, and they're still favored by 15 points just because of how bad Florida International is. They're almost like a high school team. So this will be very interesting. We will, understand after this one if New Mexico State crushes Florida International. I would say at this point, Florida International definitely would go down as the worst team in FBS this year, which is kind of an honor if you're a Florida International fan. At least you got something going for you. You're at least the worst. And then the next thing, the under-the-radar game, it's going to be Iowa State at Kansas. Iowa State, Matt Campbell coming off that disappointing home loss to Baylor. If they would have won that game, they would be ranked. Now they travel to Kansas, and Kansas is a team. They're 4-0. They've got a superstar quarterback. If they win this game, they will be inside the top 25. This game is on ESPN2. 3:30, so a little under the radar, but if Kansas, they're 3.5-point underdogs at home. If they win this game, they are getting ranked. Iowa State, if Matt Campbell loses this game, I know there's the whole rumors with maybe Nebraska's interesting. It'll be kind of, we'll see how Matt Campbell finishes out this season. Not a good look if they fall to 3-2 with a loss at Kansas. The most overrated game of the day, it is the noon game, Kentucky at Ole Miss. This is a ranked matchup. Well, I guess I'll say I think both of these teams should be ranked, but Kentucky is not a top 10 team as far as I'm concerned. Ole Miss has not looked impressive in 3 out of their 4 games. They, very narrowly beat Tulsa. Kentucky's struggling with MAC programs. I think this is a typical classic SEC battle of the overrateds. That's what I like to call these games. And the unfortunate thing is, it's going to make the winner get more even overrated, because when an overrated team beats an overrated team, the team that wins gets even more overrated. It's a little math equation, so really don't like this matchup. I guess I would pick Ole Miss at home because Kentucky's been struggling a little bit, and Ole Miss, I believe, now is 6-point favorites. That line opened at 4. It's been bet up, at least the last time I saw, to like 6 or 6.5 in Ole Miss's favor. The breakout player watch, we're going to go with Will Shipley, the former 5-star all-purpose back for Clemson. This is a game where weather could be a major factor. Will Shipley out of the backfield, the short passing game, running the ball, maybe 25 to 30 touches for him. You're at home, top 10 matchup, a lot of eyeballs, big ratings. Will Shipley could be trending on Twitter. He could have his breakout week this week versus a top 10 team in NC State. The highest scoring game, we're going to go Ohio at Kent State. Ohio played a crazy game last week versus Fordham. Like 100 points were scored or something like that. I know it was really high scoring. And Kent State, they can score themselves. They actually put 22 points on Georgia. Some of it was due to turnovers, but still, this is your typical MAC game where both offenses are a lot better than the defenses. I think the over-under in this is like 68. It's going to be very, very high scoring. Lowest scoring game, San Diego State at Boise State, the Friday night game at 8 o'clock. just both of the offenses suck and the defenses are above average. When you combine those two things, you're going to get a game that very easily could be, 17-14. I know Boise State just recently fired their offensive coordinator. Their starting quarterback hit the transfer portal this week. Things are not looking good for them. And then San Diego State, of course, last year, they were like a fringe top 25 team with one of the worst offenses in college football, and it hasn't gotten much better. So this is a game where I think Vegas overshot the spread, putting the over-under at 40. I think it's at 39 right now. I would say I would still go under. It's too extreme with how bad these offenses are. And this is a Friday night, 8 o'clock game. It's going to be sleepy. The vibes are not going to be good. It's going to be the end of the first quarter, 3-0. Halftime, it'll be like 10-3. There's not going to be high ratings. That means the under's going to hit. The under-the-radar upset, Stanford at Oregon. Guys, trust David Shaw, the superstar Stanford head coach. He's done such a great job. Stanford's a team, they did lose to Washington last week, but we're banking on a major upset this week. Oregon is fool's gold. They got lucky against Washington State. They should have lost that game. They were actually down by like 12 points with 4 minutes left. And then, it's a couple lucky plays here and there. Oregon is due for a major upset. They're going to, it's an 11 o'clock start. Nobody's going to see this coming. It's going to be a sneak attack by Stanford, and people are going to wake up and they're going to be like, what just happened? Stanford with a major upset of Oregon, who I think is ranked 15th right now, and Stanford is 16.5 underdogs in that game. Moving on, the biggest question, guys, the story of the week is weather and the massive hurricane, and we've got the weather games. I want to talk about Hurricane Ian. The NC State Clemson game is going to have significant weather. I still do like the over in that one. The Virginia Tech UNC under is a total lock due to the weather. The hurricane will come up through the Gulf of Mexico, and it'll it'll touch land, and then the system will move through up the coast. So we're going to be getting huge rain in South Carolina, huge rain in North Carolina. Both of those games are going to be affected. We've got the situation with the Florida State-Wake Forest game possibly getting moved or not getting played because of the travel issues out of Florida right now. The hurricane is supposed to hit well before Saturday, but there's going to be major flooding, things like that. That game might have to be moved. The Eastern Washington-Florida game is in complete flux right now. There's been rumors they're going to play that game in Eastern Washington. That would be great. We'll see if they move that. Maybe they move it to Sunday. But there is huge weather for all those games in Florida and then the Carolinas as well. NC State, Clemson, it's going to be wet. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, major weather there. Weirdest matchup, I'm going to go with Fresno State traveling cross-country to UConn. Of course, we know UConn, one of the worst teams in college football, but still, UConn being the independent, very odd matchup with Fresno State traveling on the road. I believe Fresno State is without their starting quarterback, and they're still 22-point favorites on the road. That is a 3:30 matchup, primetime game on CBS Network. I'm kidding. I don't know what channel the game is on, honestly. The Dallas matchup, I'm going to go with Illinois at Wisconsin. That is an 11 a.m. Central matchup on Big Ten Network. Personally, I think Wisconsin is going to win this game. I know Illinois' defense has been good, but Wisconsin is a solid program. They've got more talent. They still do have a superstar running back in Braylon Allen. They're coming off a disaster loss, but at least they showed fight against Ohio State. I respect the Illini and their defense and Chase Brown, the running back, but give me Wisconsin at home. They are like 7-point favorites, but this is just going to be a dull 11 a.m. game in Wisconsin. There's going to be no crowd energy. They just suffered a major, epic blowout loss to Ohio State, and you're facing Illinois. So that's going to be a dull one. Sneaky shootout. I'm going to go with Bowling Green at Akron. These are two quarterbacks that have shown some things. They're both vets. The defenses we know are terrible. I could see this game 38-35 back and forth. I think Bowling Green is 8-point favorites. We'll see what happens. I like the MAC. I like the higher scoring games it produces, and I think obviously it's not like these two offenses are great, but the defenses are so bad we could just get a crazy shootout between two bad teams, Bowling Green and Akron. Heisman statement, I'm going to go with Will Anderson at Arkansas. So the Arkansas-Alabama game is very interesting. At this point in the season, I'm kind of you got to prove it to me. And what we've seen from Alabama, they've had one test, and they didn't prove anything. They should have lost to Texas. Their receivers couldn't get open. Don't overreact to don't overreact to Alabama crushing Vanderbilt, crushing UL Monroe, Utah State, teams like that. This could be a game where Alabama really leans on their defense, and you could be looking at Will Anderson 2, maybe 3 sacks, maybe a forced fumble, a scoop and score, something that gets him trending on Twitter and that might kickstart his Heisman campaign, because I am still worried about that Alabama offense, specifically the receivers and things like that. Arkansas strikes me as a team that plays to the level of their competition. So they did struggle against the FCS team, Missouri State, although Missouri State's actually better than several FBS teams, but they did struggle. And then last week they play a really close game against A&M. They did lose that game, so that kind of takes some of the sting out of this 3:30 CBS game. That's where this game is, and Bama is 16.5-point favorites. I'm not betting against Nick Saban, but if you put a gun to my head, I would say take Arkansas plus 16.5. Game I'll never watch. We're going to go with Georgia Tech at Pittsburgh. 8 o'clock start time. I think Pittsburgh is right now trending 23.5-point favorites. I got Georgia Tech plus 24. I think Georgia Tech covers due to their galvanizing around the firing of their head coach. They're in flux right now, but I think Pittsburgh is being overrated a little bit. This game at Heinz Field, there's going to be no energy. 8 o'clock game with Pittsburgh as massive favorites. Nobody's going to be there. It's going to be surprising. It's going to be low scoring on the ACC network, that one. I will probably, not be watching that one with the major top 10 matchup going on. Weird fact, Florida at Eastern Washington. So yes, the Florida-Eastern Washington game is getting moved. There's something going on with it. It might move to Sunday. There's the idea where maybe Florida travels to the FCS program's home field. How amazing would that be for college football? That would certainly be the weirdest, matchup. Florida University playing at Eastern Washington. And then, another layer to it is Eastern Washington does have that blood red turf field. You guys know Boise State has the blue field. Eastern Washington has a bright red. It would be a very unique spectacle to see Florida and Anthony Richardson on that field. I would love it. It would be great for college football. Does Florida want to do that? Probably not. Right now the models suggest Florida is around a 20.5-point favorite over Eastern Washington if you look at the analytics. But if they play on the road, I don't know. It'd be great for college football, but we will see. They might just play that game on Sunday in Gainesville. But I don't know, with the airports closing and stuff like that due to the hurricane, if that's going to be allowed. The low-key important game, Washington at UCLA, the 10:30 Friday night game. In Chip Kelly we trust. Guys, Chip Kelly is going to motivate this UCLA team. He's one of college football's greatest coaches. When you look on the sideline and you see a motivator, you see an inspirational leader like Chip Kelly, UCLA is going to be motivated. I've got UCLA winning this game outright, thanks in large part to Chip Kelly. The analytics, the AI models love UCLA. Chip Kelly will lead this team to victory over Washington. It's going to be unbelievable. The Rose Bowl is going to be rocking. And you got to feel bad for Washington. They're running into a complete buzzsaw. Zach Charbonnet. Oh, my goodness, guys. UCLA, this program, they're going to be 5-0. They want to make the playoff, this UCLA team. They're pissed. They're not getting any respect. They ran through a non-conference gauntlet of a schedule. South Alabama, Bowling Green, folks. I mean, these are some tough teams they're facing. So, Colorado last week on the road. UCLA, we'll see what happens in that one. That's a Friday night game. Game I hate for some reason. SC State at South Carolina. It got freaking moved. That's just, see now folks. They moved this game to Thursday night from Saturday because of rain. You cannot do that. I understand if you're getting hit with a hurricane. You cannot move a game because of rain from a hurricane. That is ridiculous. If Ohio State should have moved their game against Michigan State back in 2015 when it was raining. That's what, like, you can't move your game because of the weather unless it's a hurricane or a severe event. How is South Carolina, they're not getting hit with a hurricane, it's just the rain from the hurricane. When the hurricane gets inland, it loses, its overall force rapidly. It's just the rain system that moves up. You can't move a game because you're getting thunderstorms or you're getting heavy rain. They're not even getting a massive wind or anything like that. This game is literally being moved to Thursday night because it's going to rain on Saturday. That cannot happen. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. Betting lock. So the Virginia Tech, North Carolina. Guys, I was like, listen, it's a lock under 51 or whatever it was. And people are betting it up. I have no clue what people are doing. They don't know how to read the weather. Guys, this game, it's going to be 7-3. I don't care how bad North Carolina's defense is. They're not going to be able to throw the ball. It's going to be basically a hurricane. They will not throw the ball. It's the lock of the century. These teams might not combine for 15 points, let alone, 52. So that is an easy one thanks to the weather. I have no idea what's going to happen. It always seems to be the Texas A&M games because Texas A&M always plays close, low-scoring games. Mississippi State, kind of a streaky team. They did just crush Bowling Green, but Mississippi State, of course, has that brutal loss to LSU where they kind of got smacked in the second half. Very interesting game. Mississippi State, a 3-point favorite at home, or maybe there might be a 4-point favorite. This game, by the way, is on SEC Network, so a lot of people won't even be seeing this game. Because it is kind of an obscure channel. Guys, I have the SEC network, the Big Ten network, and the ACC network. The only thing I don't have is like the CBS Network Plus. Like, obviously I have CBS Channel 19, but I don't have the CBS, the channel where like Army is on a lot of the time. The network or whatever. That's the thing I don't have, and I also don't have the Pac-12 network. But very few people. You got to be, the Pac-12 network, you got to be living in like the mountains. That's like the prime thing. If you want to get the Pac-12 network, you have to, it's like one of the incentives is you live in the mountains. We're going to give you it. Everyone, I've talked to, nobody has the Pac-12 network. It is very hard to get. Biggest blowout, Rutgers at Ohio State. I mean, the Ohio State is 41 or 40-point favorites right now. I don't think any other team is above 30 this week, so that one's easy. And I think a lot of it is due to Ohio State's offense. The advanced analytics really like Rutgers to cover in this one. Again, I think that's mainly because when you look at it in terms of real life, Ohio State's offense is so explosive. Even though Rutgers technically has a pretty good defense, the expectation is Ohio State will still probably score 50 points. So that's why the line is where it's at right now. The parity game, I'm going to go with Baylor beating Oklahoma State at home. So guys, when it comes to a parity game, Baylor has 1 loss, Oklahoma State is undefeated. Baylor beats Oklahoma. They both have 1 loss. It's parity. It's not exact parity because Oklahoma State had a bye week, so they're only 3-0. They're not 4-0, but still, I like Baylor at home, and they are 2.5-point favorites. And if Baylor wins this game, I mean, that's back-to-back impressive wins at Iowa State versus Oklahoma State. They had that tough loss to BYU, but that loss to BYU is really hurting the Big 12 because Baylor would legitimately be a top 10 team right now if they were undefeated. Game most like the NFL, so it is Texas A&M again at Mississippi State. It's just Texas A&M plays really close, low-scoring games, and that's kind of what my parameters when it comes to games like the NFL. The NFL has a ton of games that are lower scoring than college and always really close. In college, we're traditionally used to a lot more blowouts and things like that, higher scoring games. And then the lowest ratings, I'm going to go with the 7 o'clock game on ESPNU. It is Cincinnati at Tulsa, and Cincinnati is the favorites there. That'll be kind of an interesting game with Tulsa coming off that surprisingly good performance against Ole Miss, but that game is the ESPNU game. And when it comes to the lowest ratings on the ESPN networks on cable, ESPNU is always, normally the ESPNU 3:30 or 7 o'clock window, or maybe even noon window. One of those windows is always going to be the lowest rated game on the ESPN networks. But guys, that is going to do it for my official college football Week 5 preview. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.